We have learned about arrays and objects. We know that an array is a collection of similar data types. Like this, we can create array of 3 integers. We can also store objects in an array like primitive types. An array that contains class type elements are known as array of objects. Suppose that if you want to keep records of all students from your class strength is 60, it is not good way to create 60 separate variables. Instead of that, we will create an array of objects for that student class. Similarly, to represent employees of an organization, in our previous classes, we are using person class. Let us create new Java project, array of objects. Delete this module info.java. Create new Java class in this source folder. Let us create student class. Here the student class is also very similar to our previous class person. This is the student class. It has 3 instance variables, student ID, student name and GPA. And this is the constructor to initialize the instance variables. And this is the instance method to print the student details. Let us create another class, array of objects demo. Let us include main method stuff. We already know how to create array of primitive types. Here, this num is the integer array, will hold the integer values. We can assign values like this. In the similar way, we can create array of student objects. Here, type should be student. Let us call array name students. Type should be student. This statement will create array of 3 students. Here we just created students array. We did not initialize that array. Let us create 3 student objects. Now let us store these 3 student objects S1, S2 and S3 in the students array. Here index should be 2. We have created 3 students objects S1, S2 and S3. These reference variables S1, S2, S3 are pointing to these students objects. Then we assign these 3 reference variables S1, S2, S3 to these students array elements. Now this students array object will hold these 3 reference variables. This first element will be pointing to this object, second element this object. Arrays are always objects whether they are declared to hold the primitives or references. In this array of type int, each element can hold integer value 10, 20 and 30 like this. But this student array doesn't contain the student objects themselves, even though we are calling it as an array of students. This students array only contains the references to the objects but will not hold the real student object like primitives. We can initialize students array like this with these 3 statements without creating student reference variables and assigning them to array elements. This first element will hold the address of this first student object. In similar way, the second and third elements will hold these 2 objects. Let us change this code. Here, the students objects are in students array. So, we do not have actual variable names like S1, S2 and S3. To access these objects, we will use array notation. We already know how to access instance variables and methods using dot operator on reference variable. To print the first student details, we can use the array notation students of 0. Then it will print the first student details. Let us run this program. Student ID 123, name John, GPA 8.2. Here we are using array notation instead of variable name. To access the entire array, we can use for loops. This for loop will print all student details within the students array. To traverse array or collection elements, we can use for each loop. For each loop makes code more readable. Let us write above for loop by using for each loop. We have to mention the collection name. Here it is students array. This is for each loop. Normal for loop we are using index. For each loop does not work based on index. It traverses each element one by one. From the students array, first element will come into this S, then it will print, then second object will come into this S, again it will print, like that it will work. This for each loop code is more readable than this for loop, and it will also avoid errors like index out of bounds. Let me remove it. Suppose if we want to search student based on his or her ID in this array of objects, first let us take student ID as user input from the scanner. To use the scanner, we have to import this java.import.scanner. Let us search student based on student ID. It is of type string. Let us use this for each loop for searching. Just add an if condition. If enter student ID details matches with any of the student objects within the students array, then we will print that student details. To compare the strings, we can use this function equalsIgnoreCase. We have to compare with each object's SID. If matches, then we will print that student details, and we have to exit from the loop. If entered student ID doesn't matches with any of the object data, then we have to print the statement. Enter student ID not present within the list. Let us run this program again. Suppose if I enter 789, will print enter student ID not in the array. Let us run once again. Let us give student ID 345, which is already there within that students array. Now it is printing the student details.